Hello everyone, my name is Rondina. I'm a best-selling author and public speaker. Now, tonight's May 13th. It's a Monday evening at 8:30, and this particular blog post is our video blog post for the month. Now, the topic I chose for tonight's video blog post is a very, very serious topic. I'm not going to really tell you anything that you probably don't already know and you haven't heard on the news many times, but my intent is to present it to you maybe in a slightly different way. As an inspirational and motivational speaker, I'm hired many times to speak at company events. Sometimes it might be to inspire their management team, their employee, staff members, for a variety of different reasons. So I find in order to make that successful and not to bore people, because people don't want to constantly hear what they hear all the time, is you have to present things to them differently. And that's my intent tonight. And the topic for tonight's blog post is something that's very serious, and it's really affecting our society on all levels. My intent is not to point fingers at anybody. It's not the fact of anybody's to blame, but we need to look at the statistics and the data behind it to find out what's going on. Because what's happening is, and the topic of tonight's blog post is, what are we doing to our children? Because that's what it boils down to. Let's not kid ourselves. Life is difficult. We no longer live in a one-income family world. Actually, we're probably past the point of a two-income family world. You know, many of my friends, the father works, the mother works, and the father also works a part-time job. It's not like decades ago where mom stayed home, which was in a job in itself, taking care of the kids, taking care of the house, and they lived off of one income. Back then it was different. Opportunities weren't as fluent as they are today. The materialistic things and the technology that's available today was not available then. So that need for massive income wasn't there. Now, over the decades, so much has changed, and there's so much available to people, and we want things. We want the best things for our children. I'm a father. My 3 kids are all grown and on their own now, and they're doing very well. I'm very proud of them. But I experienced this when my kids were growing up. So let's talk about that a little bit, and let's talk about how the effects over the years have changed our society, which in turn is affecting our children. I'm going to put my email address here on the bottom of the screen. You could please feel free to email me direct. Ask me any questions you like. I answer all my emails personally. Nobody on my staff does that. And I would be happy to answer all your questions, because in a 10 or 15 minute blog post, it's hard to cover every individual little thing. So with that said, let's kind of get started. So look at what has happened to our youth over the years. There's drugs in every school. I don't care what neighborhood you come from. I was a paramedic in a large inner city environment for 32 years. And the best of the neighborhoods and the best of the schools had drugs in it, just as much as the drugs in the inner city part of the school systems had drugs. So don't think by sending your children to some fancy, expensive private school that you're going to take that drug element exposure away from them, because you aren't. So the key to that is clearly education. And our school system does a great job. Let's just touch on our school system for a minute. I teach in a lot of schools and a lot of educational institutions. I'm asked many times to come and speak to our youth, because I support that. And I work with writing, kids who love to do writing on a monthly basis. And they're just sponges. They're wealths of knowledge, and they want to learn. But with that being said, I've never met any educator, any teacher in my life that has not been willing to give 100% of themselves to their students. That's why they do this. They do this because they love to teach. They love to pass that knowledge along. And they will work with students one-on-one. I've never seen a teacher just take an attitude of, I don't care if the kids learn. Every teacher I've ever come across really cares that their students learn. So it's not that the teachers are not doing their job. It's very difficult with budget cuts for them to do their job. They don't have the supplies. Sometimes the audio-visual aids that they need just are not there. And some of the other equipment that's available to them is not readily there. Or they don't have enough of it to go around. So it's got to be spread across the whole school system, which sometimes makes it even difficult. So our teachers today have a very, very challenging problem. Also, it's not like it was years ago when if you lived in a certain area, you went to a certain school. If you lived in another area, district, you went to that school. Now, which is a good thing, by the way, because it helps our youth to be exposed to a wide variety of personalities and really helps their social development. But with busing and so on and so forth, there's a lot of integration between different school systems, which I happen to think is a very positive thing. Many parents are against that. But you know what? If you really think about it and put it down to basics, you want a well-rounded child because as that child grows and gets older, it's going to be exposed to the real world. And in the real world, they are going to come in contact with a variety of different people. So this isn't about race, color, creed, religious beliefs, any of that. This is simply about proper social development for our children. That does create an additional challenge for our teachers. Now, along with this, again, as I stated earlier, there are drugs present in almost every school system. Teachers have to be aware of that. Now, with all the active shooter incidents that are happening in schools, and you all see it on the news just as I do, teachers have to be even furthermore in tune. And I really get a kick out of some parents, and I've actually done a lot of speaking at parent-teachers organizations, and all the parents want this, all the parents want that, but when it comes to paying for it and their taxes have to go up, well, now it becomes a different story. But, try and understand if we're going to break this down to its basics and try and figure where the actual elements of the problems come into place, we have to understand that we contribute to that to some degree. We as parents, we as people do that. Our money only goes so far. Your paycheck only goes so far. There's only so much overtime you could work, or no one's ever going to be home for the children. So, in order to get all of these things, it costs money. You can't flood school systems and school parking lots with police officers and not have the budget to pay them. So, there's a lot of budget problems that need to be addressed in that area. So everybody really does the absolute best that they can. But let's take that one step further. So what happens now? What happens to our youth? What is different today than it was years ago? Because years ago, we didn't have school shootings. We didn't have 16, 17-year-old kids going to school with guns looking to kill everybody and then kill themselves. All right? And again, not pointing the fingers. I'm not saying it's a school system problem. I'm not saying parents are not doing a good job raising their kids. What I am saying is what the kids are exposed to today, kids decades ago were not exposed to. Let's take video games, for example. We won't let our child watch anything that's violent on TV. And we have all kinds of ratings and restrictions and so on and so forth. But what do? We put video games in the hands of our children that they could run around with automatic weapons and kill everything in sight. Okay, so on one end of the spectrum, we try to correct the problem by rating our movies and our TV shows appropriately, and the parents monitor what the kids watch closely, but yet they sit in front of video games for hours and hours and hours on end, playing the most violent games on the market. Okay? They're not games that are going to help your children learn and be educated. They're games that are making our children, to some degree, think that doing this kind of thing is okay. So if you have a child that has any type of psychological or mental disorder at all, and now they're growing up in this type of environment and they're exposed to these types of things, what do you expect is going to happen? Now, granted, I'll be the first to admit, listen, I've been an NRA instructor for 22 years, and I own weapons, and they're in my house, they're safe, they're locked, trigger guards, ammunition is kept separate. I'm a responsible gun owner. And most people are. But you know what? Sometimes when a child has access to those weapons, then things are going to happen. Okay? So, again, parents aren't home as much. The kids are with babysitters more. And again, I'm going to repeat this, and I don't mean to be redundant. I am not pointing the finger at any parent or saying they are wrong. They are doing what they need to do for their family to survive. So the offside to that, or I should say the flip side to that, is going to be that the parental presence is not going to be there as much. So by the time everybody comes home from work, the parent and the kids come home from school, the parents have a limited number of hours with the children. A lot of parents have to work the weekends, and maybe only one instead of both parents are there. So the kids have a lot of free time on their hands. So do we need to start thinking about what we want our youth exposed to? All right. So again, we try and control one set of exposure, but yet we exploit the other part of the exposure. So are we really doing right by our children? So now, if you look at some of the studies that are out now say at certain age groups, they should only be exposed to video games, say, for 1 hour a day. And then as they get older, 2 hours a day. You know, and even a teenager, I think in the last set of data that I looked at, a teenager in their teens, which is by that time, let's not kid ourselves, by the time your child is 17 or 18 years old, 16 years old, they should know right from wrong and understand that concept. Even then, they're only recommending 2 to 3 hours a day. Yet, my own grandson, okay, I know for a fact, at 10 years old, it sits there for 5 or 6 hours a day and maybe more playing video games. So it's not a positive step forward. Okay, so what happens is society, to some degree, because we are all society and we accept this, we do have a certain responsibility, and we are actually playing a role in the things that are affecting our children. And that's why the topic of this blog post is, what are we doing to our children? Are we really doing what's right or what's best for them? There's not as much family involvement as there was decades ago. I'm a little bit older than maybe a lot of the viewers here, but I was raised in an era where everything was closed on a Sunday. If you didn't get gas on a Saturday and you ran out of gas on a Sunday, you were out of luck. All right. Nothing was open. Family day was Sunday, whether you wanted it to be a family day or not. We don't have that anymore. We now work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. My God, even on holidays and on Thanksgiving, there's no time where stores are closed. So even on those days, stores open later and family time is interrupted. I think probably the only holiday where stores are actually closed for 24 hours is probably Christmas Day. So all of this is going to have a social impact. A lot of states now talk about legalizing marijuana. I've got 40 years of experience in pre-hospital medicine. Marijuana is an addicting drug, addicting medication, if you want to put it that way. It's going to be very, very difficult to control. I'm not going to give you an opinion as to whether or not I think it should be legalized or not legalized. But, I have to ask myself the question is, are our government leaders legalizing this because they want to get the tax base? They want to get that tax income. So some of the things that we do, are we doing it for the right reason? Or inadvertently, are we really hurting our younger people? Kids to get involved in sports nowadays in school is very expensive. I don't know how many of you, as parents, have ever had your kids on a hockey team or not. It costs thousands of dollars a year. We're not talking about a couple of $100 or a $50 registration fee. All right. It's very, very expensive. So the problem is a lot of parents just don't have the money for their kids to be in extracurricular activities to keep them active so they don't have so much downtime that they're sitting there for hours on end playing video games. You know, again, when I was young growing up, and I'm not, there's got to be a comparison to some degree, but my parents threw us out of the house. There was no sitting around on a Saturday afternoon and watching TV all day. It was like, get out, ride your bikes, play with your friends, do something, but you're not going to sit home all day in front of a TV. So, do we still have that? So because of that, are our kids developing socially as quickly as they could? So let's bring that to another level. Let's talk about the peer pressure. There's a big push right now, which I thoroughly support on Instagram, doing some testing where they're going to be removing the ability to like posts. Well, let's talk about that for a minute, and let's talk about that impact. Every one of us that does any kind of social media posting, we all want to see how many people like our posts. Now, personally, I post something because I want to share it. It's not important to me if someone likes it because, one, I'm smart enough to know that everybody has different opinions. So some people are going to like what I posted. Other people aren't going to like what I posted. I've had posts that have gone up and I've had 15 or 20 likes. And I've put posts up that have had 5, 6, 7, 8,000 likes. But I'm old enough and mature enough to know that. But our young people, are they really old enough to understand that? No. To them, the number of likes they receive is a gauge of how many friends they have, how popular they are, how they're accepted. So you add that peer pressure, okay, to the additional pressure that we put on them because we're now pushing our educational system where they have so much and so much and so much to learn and so much to do at younger ages. Okay, now we have kids that before they actually even hit high school have low self-esteem, low self-confidence. They don't feel accepted. They don't feel part of the group. So now when they hit high school, they will pretty much do anything to be accepted into the in crowd, if you want to put it that way. So I think to remove the like feature from all social media platforms, it is a positive thing. Okay, we need to remove that peer pressure from the age group of children that don't understand the concept of what that means. The data and statistics also say that if any of you have social media accounts, which I'm sure most of you do, and you have followers, that 1%, okay, of the number of followers actually see your posts. You take Twitter, which is a very popular platform. Your post only lives on someone's news feed for less than 8 minutes. So unless they're willing to scroll through a whole bunch of back pages to see if you made a post, they don't even see your post. So think about this. If you have 800 and 900 followers, possibly only 8 or 9 people are seeing your post. And less than one of those people will hit that like button. All right? So think about that as a concept and think about emotionally and psychologically how that's going to affect a child at a very young age. At an age where they don't understand this. They don't understand this information. To them, as I said earlier, it's just about popularity. So, they don't get it. So now, as they grow up and they don't have the confidence that they should have, how are they going to be able to intermingle with people, and how will their social development be able to be normal? All right. Now you throw them into a school system. They start to get older. They're not accepted by the in crowd. Okay. The good looking girls, the handsome guys, the popular football players. jocks, whatever you want to call them, okay? And nothing against those because I two sports in high school. So, um, but now they have this need to get into this social environment and they're not accepted into that environment because they're not considered popular. So when you add not one of these aspects, but when you add all of the aspects together, you now have a great number of young people in our society growing up with emotional issues. All right. A lot of times the parents don't see it because at home the kids are acting normal. Kids are not going to run to their parents. I never ran to my parents if I had a problem, and you probably never ran to your parents if you had a problem. Who do kids run to? They run to their friends. Do their friends have any more knowledge than they do to help them and guide them in the right direction? Of course not. All right? They're not expected to. I mean, my God, I speak at colleges, and you would be surprised how many kids, college kids, don't even know how to balance their own checkbook. Are you kidding me? You're 19 years old and you can't balance a checkbook? I was balancing my own checkbook when I was 17. Okay? So we have a social development problem. And that social development problem over time, in some cases, not all cases, is going to lead to a lot of the things that we see happen and we hear about on the news. All right. So this is a social problem. And because it's a social society problem, it affects each and every one of us. And if each and every one of us choose to ignore it and sit back as we watch the 5 o'clock news or the 11 o'clock news at night and say, oh my God, what a shame. I can't believe another school shooting. Oh my God, he's only 17 years old. But if we're not going to be proactive about it as a society, we cannot expect, number one, our police department to be able to control millions of children. It's literally impossible. We can't expect our school systems to do it because they're so overwhelmed and classes are so overfull that they don't necessarily see the student at that level. It's got to start at home. It has to start with us as parents. Like I said, my kids are grown, they're older, but I have grandchildren. And I talk to my children all the time. Hey, when I get on the phone and I talk to one of my grandkids, hey, Anthony, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just playing video games. Well, how long have you been playing video games today? And he'll tell me, and I'll get my son or whatever on the phone. I'll say, why are you letting him play video games that long? Kick him out of the house. Get him outside playing, And this has got to be a proactive thing. If it doesn't happen, ladies and gentlemen, I promise you, okay, as much as I hate to say it and it bothers me to say it, I promise you that socially things are going to get much worse. They are not going to get better. So I guess the overall goal of what I'm trying to say to you is, and one of the things I teach when I do an educational class, and one thing that I profess very strongly about is prevention and awareness. We cannot prevent anything that we are not aware of. The problem is a lot of times when we become aware of things, we go into a state of denial. We'll say my child will never do that. I don't want to tell you how, as a paramedic, how many times I had to go to a school principal's office to check out a child medically, and the parents would be there, and the very first thing out of their mouth would be, my son would never do that, or my daughter would never do that. Well, wake up call, guess what? Your son did, your daughter did. All right? So don't go into denial about it. Find out and accept the fact that they did it. Find out what the reason is and fix it. Okay? Bottom line, anybody who's ever gone to any event that I spoke at will tell you that I tell it the way it is. I don't sugarcoat it. This isn't about sugarcoating. This is a real problem. Our children are killing themselves. They're committing suicide because they have mental and emotional disorders. They're killing other people, and it's on the rise. It's not getting any better. It's getting worse. And the rate that it's getting worse is alarming. So if you think it's an alarming rate now, what do you think it's going to be like in another 5 years if we don't do something about it as a society? So, again, I'm not trying to tell you how to raise your children. That's not the purpose of this blog post. The purpose of this blog post is to really summarize this problem in a very realistic manner and make you aware of it. Now, it's only up to you to look at your own younger children and see what you could do to prevent it. So, I kind of hope I brought this a little bit more to light than what you just see on the news. And you've probably heard all these different things in individual different speaking things or commentators from newscasters. I just kind of wanted to put this in all one group and one post for you. So with that, thank you so much for listening to my blog post. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got something out of it. That's the most important thing. So thank you very much. Have a great evening, and God bless.